Hello, Bible readers. In the last post, I admitted I couldn't squeeze all that chapter 4 and 5 are into one discussion. So now we get to the stuff that blows people's minds. Then and now and probably for always. John sees the sealed scroll in the right hand of the one seated on the throne, right? But nobody can open it. And so he cried like a baby until... And this is the moment we've all been waiting for. An elder says, "Do not weep. The Lion, the root of David, has conquered so that he can open the scroll." This moment reminds me of a scene, one of my favorites in the musical Hamilton. I hope you know the one I'm talking about. We meet George Washington for the first time. "Here comes the general." We hear the choir singing in the background, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, we haven't met the general yet." You know, we've seen Hamilton. We've kind of caught up with his biography for a little bit, but "the one you've been waiting for," Hamilton sings. And then, oh, of course, George Washington, he comes out, and the thing about him, both in the musical and in real life, was he met every earthly expectation of what a leader was supposed to be like. Like, he was tall and he was handsome and he carried himself with that Southern dignity. He dressed the part. He was married into the right family. Well, that's the kind of figure that Israel has been waiting for, as their scriptures talk about the coming from the root of David. Of course, David was the king of the glory age, glory days, being the Lion of the tribe of Judah. This will be the Messiah. So John, in this vision, has done a masterful job of building up to this moment. Here comes the general, and then this is the anointed one who's going to establish justice, who will be full of righteous indignation and punish the oppressors, and as they deserve. God's people have been lambs for the slaughter long enough. So John looks at the appointed place where the Lion is going to be, where that Lion is supposed to appear, and he sees a slaughtered Lambykins. Boring says, "This is perhaps the most mind-wrenching rebirth of images in all of literature," I'd say. And it's clear that many refuse to receive it. Those who believe in the rapture, for example, refuse to believe it. Maybe what it really means is that the Lamb will become a lion. So his first coming, the first coming of Christ, was as a lamb that got slaughtered on a cross. But then the next time that he comes, when Christ comes again, that time he'll be a lion. And look out. And those who don't respond to the love offered by Jesus the first time around will get the apocalyptic violence of the second go-round. Maybe that's how it is. This, of course, would be the exact polar opposite hope from what John is trying to communicate with Revelation. John writes this vision to replace the lion image, the lion expectation, with a slaughtered Lambykins. And also, when John says the slaughtered lamb, he's using a form of the verb that represents a continuing slaughter. It's not that slaughter happened once for all time, but that slaughtered just is continuously. It's like a state of being. English doesn't have this tense like many other languages do, but one example is when we sing "Joy to the world," we say, "The Lord is come." Like, that's no typo. It's not a mistake in your hymnal when you sing "The Lord is come." Because it's not just that the Lord has come, the Lord is come. Or another time we do it is "The Lord is risen." He is risen. The slaughtered lamb was killed on the cross and is slaughtered. Well, that's not going to just up and change when Jesus returns, as he transforms from meek and mild Lambykins to fierce lion bringer of death. love was not a provisional strategy to be eventually replaced by violence. That's not what John's trying to say anyway. Well, they had their chance. Love didn't work, so I guess they all have to be destroyed. Because that's the vision of rapture, right? It's not the vision of John. So many refuse to believe a slaughtered lamb could be a faithful image of God. Like maybe God appears as the Lambykins for good people, but as a fierce lion for bad people. But of course, Revelation never says anything about a two-sided nature to this slaughtered one. This idea is just made up. Maybe the lamb is really a lion, like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I mean, it's got 7 horns, 7 eyes. Those horns are meant to communicate Christ's power, and the eyes are meant to communicate that Christ is all-seeing, but that would gloss over the fact that this lamb is slaughtered, and that John always uses this Greek word arnion. He never uses the typical New Testament Greek word for lamb, amnos. Like any other part of the New Testament, that's the word, lamb is amnos. That's the usual Greek word. John goes out of his way to use this other word, though, arnion, which is basically like us taking a word and putting a Y on it or an ISH on it. Like if I would say, well, that's good-ish, right? Like good-ish is not a word, but you'd understand what I was trying to say, that this thing, whatever it is that I'm saying is goodish, it's good, but only kind of, right? We can play with English. One can play with any language. Well, John is playing with Greek here, and he's not just saying Jesus is a slaughtered lamb. He's saying arnion. He's saying Jesus is a slaughtered Lambykins. David Erlander called the slaughtered lamb fluffy. And I think that's right. The whole point of what John is doing with this introduction, this first time that we're introduced to the lamb, this is the first of 29 times John's going to use this definitive title for Christ in Revelation. The whole point of what John is doing is to turn our expectations of what real power is and what God's love really is inside out. After redefining Messiah, after redefining what winning really is according to God, as God wins by being slaughtered and is still slaughtered, John then redefines the word conquer. The lamb is said to conquer. In fact, as much as lamb is the definitive title for Christ, the primary verb of Christ is conquer. But what does conquer mean? It means to die. Never in Revelation, not once, does conquering refer to any destructive judgment on the enemies of Jesus or destructive judgment on the enemies of Jesus' followers. That's never what this verb is used for. Jesus stood before the Roman court and remained faithful unto death. That was the victory of Jesus, remaining faithful unto death. That's what it looked like for Jesus to conquer. And John is telling Christians in Asia in the first century to conquer like that. Share in God's glory, sit on the throne in God's throne room by doing just what Jesus did. Conquer. Remain faithful unto death itself, if need be. So the cross redefines what it looks like to win. To the world, Jesus hanging there looks like he's losing, like for real. In faith to John and to the church, Jesus remaining faithful on the cross, remaining faithful to the love and mercy of God, allowing himself to be slaughtered, that's what true power looks like. That's what it means to conquer. And that too is hard for lots of people to accept. Plenty of Christians want our religion to be about becoming powerful ourselves, not conquering by allowing the powers of this tribulation-filled world to kill us. Oh, and one more thing. These 2 chapters use language and images that are absolutely universal. As exclusive as so many Christians want God to be, this vision from John just isn't. The last words of the heavenly chorus celebrate and praise the creator of all. The choir that sings the final chorus of chapter 5, in praise to the Lamb, is comprised not of some of the creation, but of the whole of creation. Boring says, the whole grand vision of chapters 4 and 5 proceed from God through Christ to the living creatures, which represent the whole creation, to the 24 elders, to an innumerable host, which is meant to include absolutely everybody. No one and nothing is excluded from this picture. Now, you might wonder, where does this scene fit? Like as we launch into chapter 6, which we're about to do, into the tough stuff of plagues and judgment, when or where does this part go? Remember that Revelation is not written in a linear fashion where chapter 1 leads obviously to chapter 2, This section I've described in 4 and 5, they give the big picture of the whole deal. Past and future collapse, Boring says, into the present of chapters 4 and 5. The point is, or the goal of John here is to, having seen the big picture, a reader is ready to understand that chapters 6 to 18 are just part of that big picture. They're not God's final word on anyone. Full and complete salvation for all is how it all ends, as we've already seen. But as much as we have a foretaste of that, it is now and not yet. So next time I won't be talking specifically about a chapter or verse. We will get to chapter 6 soon, but I'll be talking about interpreting Revelation's violent imagery. Like, what do we do with it? How do we make sense of it? I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.